Hi, if you're new to my channel, my name's Lara, Adoptee, adoption wellbeing researcher, coach and psychotherapist. And today I'm going to talk about signs that you might be in a relationship with somebody suffering with adoption abandonment issues. So if you've watched any of the other videos on my channel, you will note that I talk a lot about attachment issues that are very much a part of life, a way of life for most adoptees. I would say up until they've managed to work through that and deal with the issues that that sense of abandonment creates for people. Much of the fallout of abandonment is unconscious, and actually we behave in particular ways, all of us behave in particular ways, but a good chunk of how we behave is unconscious, and it's from unconscious conditioning and adaptation and patterns that are set up very early on. In terms of abandonment, issues of abandonment usually play out in our most intimate relationships, although those can often manifest in other sorts of relationships too, friendships or professional relationships. But really what we see is that any kind of issues or insecurities, they tend to really take hold in those sort of most personal and intimate relationships that we have in our lives. Those are the relationships that I guess mean the most to us. Those are the relationships where we feel or should feel the safest technically, and I guess that's where the vast majority of our insecurities play out. Now, a lot of our reactions are unconscious, and this is what can make it truly challenging for an adoptee. But if you're in a relationship with an adoptee, you might find that you are sort of in these patterns, that there's this kind of push-pull kind of thing that goes on within the relationship, that's really hard for you to manage. And the adoptee is not even necessarily aware of the reason for those behaviours just are, and we do see that these patterns do create issues within relationships very often. People can work through their issues of abandonment very often until people consciously recognise that their ways of being within relationship are down to their attachment style or the issues of abandonment. Then these patterns will just keep on going. If you're in a relationship with an adoptee, you might notice any or all of the next 6 points that I'm going to talk about. The first is that you feel like you're constantly tested. So are you in a relationship with an adoptee whereby it feels like they're constantly trying to put you through some sort of a test that you really mean what you say, that you really want to be with them, that you are never able to do enough, let's say, or that any kind of small situation is very triggering to them, one that you might look at in a completely different way? If so, this is very likely a sign that they are still struggling with the abandonment issue, albeit unconsciously. And I guess that could be things like really putting your love to the test, making you prove to them that you do love them. And fundamentally, an adoptee doesn't necessarily feel that they are lovable. And so when you say that you love them, because they have such a poor self-concept, because they were abandoned, and we've talked in previous videos about getting our brains around very often the idea that there was no other choice, maybe, and that there were no other options other than having them put up for adoption. That logically or cognitively, whilst we can accept that, emotionally and psychologically, that's still very, very damaging, and the wound that is created from that will create all sorts of problems in the self-concept. So the person in your life fundamentally cannot love themselves at this stage, and therefore cannot understand how you could possibly love them. Is all of that conscious thought? No, it's definitely not. It's very much unconscious thought. It's coming from a reactive place. It's coming from a place of insecurity and fear, and of an overwhelming sense of not feeling safe within the world and within the relationship. feeling that they're very dispensable, let's put it that way. And so the fallout for you of that feeling, or of that unconscious feeling, is that you are going to be very often put to some sort of a test. And yes, I think that can be absolutely exhausting for you on the receiving end of that, which is why they say that, you know, being in relationship with somebody, even after the person who you're in relationship with, if they're adopted, even after they've begun to work on their issues of attachment and abandonment, it still takes somebody very, very patient, somebody very, very compassionate, thoughtful and secure themselves to make a success very often of the relationship with the adoptee. Because it's not your job. It's not your job to make the person that you're in a relationship with happy. Yes, it's your job maybe to enhance their happiness, but it's the job of the adoptee, and it's in the same way that it's the job of all individuals to fundamentally find a way to be secure within themselves and to create their own happiness. So yes, number one, if you feel that you're constantly being tested, it could be that the adoptee in your life is yet to navigate and work through issues of abandonment. Number two, when you pass the test, it only lasts a day or so. And that's the fundamental problem with feeling unworthy, of the unconscious feelings of shame and of unworthiness that an adoptee carries with them throughout their life, up until they're able to recognize their own patterns and start to work through that. So you might have an argument, or you might be put to one of these tests, and you might pass that test and convince the person that you love that you do in fact love them, and think that's done now for another X amount of months, or possibly we don't need to have that conversation ever again. Oh no, I think what happens then is that very often within days the same issue is coming up. So you pass the test, but it very soon feels like you need to be passing that test again. And that's a very clear sign that, you know, you can calm them down, but you can never replace their own sense of security that they have within themselves, which goes back to this notion that we all are responsible for our own levels of security. And until the person that you love feels secure within themselves, you're never going to pass the test, because it's only ever temporary. It's only ever a band-aid or temporary solution. So you have to kind of understand where they're coming from. Yes, reassure them and gently encourage them to work through their own issues of abandonment in a loving and in a compassionate way. So number two was, if you feel that that test has come back around very, very quickly after having just passed a test of a similar nature. Number three is that the person that you love is not really allowing you to get close to them. And this comes from a place of fundamental lack of trust. And how else could a person who has been, let's say, abandoned but given up for adoption, trust anybody? Again, it's an unconscious feeling, but it's about self-protection, it's about self-preservation. And so if you feel that your attempts to try and get close to that person are met with barriers, are met with that person shutting down slightly and not revealing much about how they feel, much about their vulnerabilities, then it's another sign that probably those feelings have not properly been dealt with, that the attachment issues haven't been dealt with, and they're protecting themselves. What you need to try and understand is that it's not about you. It's not that you're fundamentally untrustworthy. It's that actually everybody is fundamentally untrustworthy to the adoptee who is still dealing with issues of abandonment. So number three is that you just feel you can't get close. They won't let you get close. And number four is the absolute opposite of that, that they won't let you get too far away either without being really, really triggered. Now, that might come in the form of having to go away for work, or it might have some other kind of trigger, like going away for a weekend with friends or going out for a night. There's something about you having other interests and other needs in your life which are very, very healthy and which are absolutely vital and which are very crucial, but that the adoptee will see those as a potential threat to them. And the way that they might look at that is that all of those other things are more interesting than them, or more alluring than them, or more important than them. And again, this is all coming from that place of unconscious shame, a sense of unworthiness. As an adoptee, there's that constant feeling that you need to prove that you're worthy. You're worthy of existing, almost, that you're worthy of certainly being somebody's partners, that you're worthy of them loving you, because of that fundamental damage that has been caused by being relinquished. Now, obviously, I'm not taking any sides I'm trying to use my language very carefully, because I understand all three corners of the adoption triad, and I can speak about these things from my own personal experience as an adoptee. But I understand the difficulties for the adoptive parent, and I understand biological mothers have to give up their children, and very often under duress. So I think it's very limiting to take one particular angle in all of this. But what I am always going to say is that the adoptee will always experience that, no matter why. They will always experience that sequence of events in a particular way, and in a way that's damaging to their self-esteem and their self-concept and their sense of worthiness. Number 5 is that even when things are going well, so you might be in a period where there are no tests happening, that if everything feels fine, if you tell them that you love them, they simply find it really, really hard to believe, and they cannot believe it, and they want to have you prove to them why you love them, how you love them, what it is about themselves that you love. And so, again, it's another example of a fundamental lack of self-love, a fundamental lack of self-esteem. And so if you're experiencing that with the adopted person who you are in a relationship with, it could be another sign that they are struggling with abandonment issues and attachment issues and low self-concept. And so it's a good idea to encourage compassionately and with love that they seek someone out to help them work through their abandonment issues. Number 6 is this idea that the adopted person thinks that the person that they're in a relationship with is perpetually more interested in everybody else, and that can manifest itself in all sorts of very toxic ways. That you could be accused of speaking in a particular way or looking at somebody in a particular way, where you feel, I'm completely innocent of what you've just accused me of. Now, obviously, you're seeing a theme coming through all of these points, and that they're all coming from the same place, one of unworthiness and issues of abandonment. But these are some of the ways in which these manifest in relationships. So if you feel like you are being questioned a lot, that you're being asked what your feelings are about a particular person, be that a colleague, a professional colleague, or an innocent friend, or something else, then understand that's what's happening there, and do try and keep your cool, reply with compassion, and reply honestly. And I know that's very difficult in those moments where tempers are rising and emotions are all up in the air. It's very tempting to say, how many times do I have to say this to you? And you might find that you do say, how many times do I have to say this to you? But these are just 6 signs that you might be experiencing in your relationship that show that the adopted person that you're in a relationship with has not yet fully worked through some of those issues. And actually, I'll say that can be a lifelong process. So it's not that you can't be in a relationship with somebody who hasn't started on that journey. Very often the journey to healing is a lifelong journey. But if they don't start, then it's very unlikely to change. And things can improve, and you can help them. You can help them in a compassionate way and in a loving and in a supportive way. I will reiterate that actually it takes a very patient, very compassionate, quite secure and a loving kind of a person to be able to stick it out in relationship with an adoptee who has issues of abandonment. And the pushing you away and the pulling you in and the pushing you away and the pulling you in and the testing you generally is because of this very feeling that they can't trust you, but they want to trust you, that they want to prove that they're lovable. And so all of this stuff can end up being quite toxic. And I just want to add at this point that I hear all the time the expression, oh, so-and-so makes me happy, or so-and-so doesn't make me happy. And I think it's a very unsustainable way of looking at a relationship. Relationships that are healthy are where each individual has their own sense of themselves, that they are able to recognize their own value, that they have their own self-worth, and that they're able to love themselves. And I know that sounds a little cheesy, but if you can't love yourself, you truly can't love another person effectively. So it's never your job to make the person that you're with happy. You can help them, you can support them, you can enhance, as I've said previously, you can enhance their experience of being in the world. You can do things together and make things more enjoyable, but you can never fundamentally make that person happy or make that person secure, and neither should you. You could never achieve that. It would be much too big of an ask for anybody to be the sole source, because it never really lasts, as we've seen with the test situation, that unless it's coming from inside of the person, it's not sustainable and it won't endure. So I would suggest that you, if you're experiencing all of this, go easy on yourself, be compassionate towards the person that you love, and encourage them to figure this out for themselves. Hold them through that journey, and I mean figuratively, of course, because it's a painful journey. It's a very, very hard and sad and difficult journey, but it's one that's absolutely vital if the person that you love is going to live with emotional freedom and an enhanced sense of self and a self-worth. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it helpful. Please like, please subscribe, and please hit the bell. Thank you.